Mark, Wally, you.
Two things. With Gardner, I know you sort of brushed it off throughout much of the second half, but he rarely stole a base. He went 2 straight months without attempting a stolen base.
Right.
Was there a reason for that? I mean, I know you've said he has a green light.
Yeah.
I mean, with 2 months for that guy, it was 18-21 before that.
Yeah. No, there is no answer. Part of it is he wasn't on nearly as much the second half, and teams pay attention to him obviously a lot. But that's something that probably needs to be addressed because we need that out of him, and that's something that you look at. Physically, he never really complained about his legs, but physically, sometimes where a guy doesn't steal as much, maybe they don't physically feel as good. They're not going to tell you. They're not going to ask out of the lineup. But that's the things that, like I said, I got to look at. As an organization, we have to look at the optimal number of days that you play a guy, in a sense, to get the most out of him and for him to be the most productive.
That 2-month stretch started June 12th, so it was a month before the All-Star break, where he was still playing well. Is that something where you or your coach or somebody have to say, check with him and say, is there a reason this isn't happening? I mean, you got to talk about him and Jacoby being, his table setters and getting on base and stealing bases, and it seems very odd that he would go that length of time.
It's odd to me, and I think that, I would ask him how he felt, on a number of occasions. He get in a long stretch, I feel good, and he wasn't running as much, and those guys are really important to the top. Those two guys to me are the guys that really make our offense go. So getting those two and keeping them on track for a whole season, has a lot to do with our success.
And the other thing was, you talk about teams like the Cubs, the Cubs with Arrieta, the Astros with Keuchel, you look at the Blue Jays with Price, they all have that big Cy Young type number one. Do you still view Tanaka as that guy? Or, there's some big pitchers on the free agent market this year. Do you think you guys need to add a big-time ace to have one of those one-game playoff type guys?
Well, I think that's a dangerous way to build your club for a one-game playoff, in a sense, from the beginning, because what it does is it probably hurts you in a number of other areas. And I think when you go into the season trying to win your division in the long haul, and sometimes there's a trade made to maybe give you that guy. But and looking at Tanaka, I think, he's a top-of-the-line rotation pitcher. I think he's, is he a 1, is he a 2? I don't know. But I think Sevy has a chance to be a top-line rotation. And I think, to me, the most important thing is that during the course of the season, we have 5 starters that could compete every day and give you a chance to win. That's the most important thing for me. And really, to be safe, you better have 6 or 7.
Ron.
If you want to add a right-handed bat to your offense, is second base the only option, or do you think trades are possible to create a spot somewhere else?
Well, I think anything's always possible. I do. And until November 1st or whenever the World Series is over, there'll be a lot of discussions on, as a club, what we need to do as an organization and how do we get better. But I've always said about trades. Trades only work if both teams can agree on who to trade. That's the bottom line. So I'm sure that will be looked at.
Do you need to add
we lost a big right-handed bat, is what happened to us, I think, really against lefties a lot. So we expect to have Tex back and healthy. And that adds a big right-handed bat. And depending on who your second baseman is, that could add a substantial bat too, which changes our club.
Chad.
Joe, CeCe's current situation aside, just on the field, what did you make of his year, and do you look at him going into next season as anything other than one of your starting pitchers?
Well, I thought when you looked at his last, was it 7 or 8 starts, I thought once you looked at his starts with his knee brace, I thought things got better. I did. His ERA was substantially lower. He pitched much better. I think right now, you view him as a starter. You see how he physically bounces back again. But right now, I think, you're viewing him as one of our starters.
Also, you mentioned second base. Do you feel like you found your solution at the end of the year?
He played well. it's a small sample. I thought he improved during Double-A or Triple-A during the course of the season. I think it's you look at him, you look at what's available, and you make a decision. Yeah, I mean, I think you look at him, but I think you have to, that's something that will have to be addressed this winter.
Billy.
Joe, do you expect Tanaka to be used in kind of the same way where you're trying to get him, 5 days rest most times?
I think that's another discussion that we have to have. And if you look at his numbers, and I know it's a small sample, there really wasn't a difference when he went on normal rest and had the extra day. We had some physical concerns going into the season, and I think we were, trying to be proactive in that situation. But I thought he answered the bell pretty well, going on normal rest. So that's something that at times can really shake up your bullpen and shake up what you do. So I think inserting a sixth starter every once in a while is not a bad idea, but it becomes somewhat of an up and down shuttle when you don't do that. And sometimes you don't necessarily want to send someone down who's in your bullpen. So I think that's something we really have to address too.
Are your concerns about his physical condition, his elbow, any different now than they were in spring training?
Yes, I think he.
In what way? Yeah,
I think he answered that, and I think that he showed that was not an issue during the course of the season.
Brian and Anthony up front.
Joe, with A-Rod, do you look at him as a DH only going forward, or do you think you might go back to having him work out in the infield?
I imagine that he's probably mostly going to be a DH moving forward. That's something that we'll probably address in the winter as well, because you look at the makeup of your club and could you expect something, but it's probably mostly DH.
Anthony.
Joe, obviously you guys relied on some younger players this year. Going back to Ref Snyder, was there something about him or his game or the way he played that when he came up at midseason, then he went back down, and you guys had Drew and had Ryan at second base with a platoon. Was there some reason that Ref Snyder didn't get more opportunity in between his call up and when he finally sort of emerged at the end?
Well, I think the one thing is a club that you always have to make sure that you have is depth. And if we would have kept Ref Snyder in a sense, and there were still some question marks that had to be answered about him, about playing the position and that sort of thing, because he was young at it, and there was shifts taking place and different things that were taking place that we wanted to make sure that he was completely aware of. The one thing that I've realized about playing the infield, it's so much different than it used to be. There are so many little things that you have to know. You have to be able. Every player, except the first baseman, has to be able to play on the other side of the diamond. That's a big difference than what it was 3 or 4 years ago. So by doing that, we probably would have had to release someone, and we weren't ready to do that. And when we had looked at what Drew had done, since the time that we had sat him down in Oakland for those 3 days, his numbers were pretty good after that. And he got hot at some times, and the ballpark played favorable to him, and he was playing extremely good defense. So we decided to stick with that. Drew got hurt again, and it really allowed Ref to get another chance, and when he was given that chance, he grabbed hold of it and ran with it, and that's why he stayed in there. Before Drew got hurt, if you remember, there was a 10-day period that he was as hot as anyone on our team, and we were thinking, okay, if he continues to play like this, and it was unfortunate he got hurt, but it opened up a chance for Ref, and he took advantage of it.
Sweeney.
Joe, do you have any players right now that are going to need any off-season surgery?
As of right now, I don't think so. As we look at guys, Jake's knee healed up fine, and we didn't have any issues, with a lot of the guys that were question marks going into spring training. So as far as the surgery that is scheduled, there's nothing scheduled right now.
We'll take a few more. Mark and Andrew.
So this offseason's a little strange in that you only have 3 free agents. That's Capuano, Drew, and Young. None of your major big-name guys. If this team returns pretty much intact from what it was this year, no major changes, do you think this team is good enough to take the next step next year?
I do, because if you look at our club, and if guys would have had some of the offensive numbers that they had in the first 4 months, the last 2 months, I think we substantially would have had more wins. And I think it's possible we would have won our division. I know that didn't happen, and those are reasons that we have to sort out as an organization, and probably more me as a manager. But if you look at that, we won 87 games. Our division winner won 92? Or 91 or whatever it was. And, we had some guys that really had some tough second halves. And if they have the same second half as the first half, I think it's a much different story.
Who has it? Andrew, I'm sorry.
Joe, you mentioned that there's young players you think on the horizon. You mentioned Judge, Ref Snyder, Sanchez. Are those guys who could impact you next year, and how so? And also, who else is in your mind that maybe can have an impact in some way?
Well, I think there's a number of relievers that came up and got good experience, too. You got a Brady Lale. There were guys in Double-A that started in Double-A that we weren't really anticipating having. I don't think anyone would have anticipated that Greg Bird would have had the impact that he had. I don't. And the little sample that they had, I'm not so sure anyone would have thought that Mason Williams or Slade Heathcott would have made an impact. So to me, when there's talent, there's an opportunity that they're going to have an impact for you. So I think there's a number of kids. And sometimes when you have young players that are extremely talented, they get there before you think they're going to get there. And I think that's what happened this year. Will he? Well, anything's possible. And sometimes it happens through an injury. My first opportunity was through an injury. And then, I went down for 40 days and then came back. But that was my opportunity. It gave me an opportunity. And sometimes, the one thing with a young player, though, is you don't want a young player only playing once a week or twice a week when there's still development that could take place that would slow that down. So that's always the question that you have to answer. Is he going to thrive in this? John Ryan Murphy did very well. I thought he thrived in his situation for a backup catcher. I thought he had a very good year where, there's that question. Do we want him to catch every day in AAA, or would you rather him be the backup? And we chose for him to be the backup, and he did a really good job.
Billy, I'm back.
When you guys got Ackley, one of the things that Cashman said that he liked is his versatility. With Alex, presuming he's just going to be a DH only, you don't have a lot of flexibility with your roster. And I'm just wondering if Ref Snyder was an outfielder in college, Murphy grew up as an infielder. Are those guys? Could you be asking them to jump into those positions for versatility reasons?
I don't really see a Ref Snyder necessarily going back to the outfield. I think we will continue to try to develop him as a second baseman. We believe that his bat is going to play and that thing. Now, could you toy around with playing a Murph at a different position one day or here or there? I think you could. I think he's athletic enough to do it. I think you have to see the makeup of your roster before you necessarily start doing those things. But I'm not opposed to doing that. You've seen me out of need sometimes do some things that maybe had some of you scratching your head. I never thought I'd put a Carlos Beltran at first base, but when my option was him or Ichiro one night, I had to do it. So I'm not opposed to doing anything if it has value and I think it'll help us.